Hello there. Oh, Gary here. This is a tutorial on how to use this software. This is by no means just recording history. So you're not just duplicating what you do everywhere else in your books and having to go through a lot of work without getting any rewards. And I know doing the numbers is for a lot of people is not necessarily the most enjoyable part of the farm. They'd far rather be going to a farm show and looking at new gear and things like that. But this is put together very simply, was not built by accountants, which is both good and bad. Nothing against accountants. But I farmed, been involved in ag, been involved in working with hundreds of different farms. And this was built with the idea that you could fill it in relatively painless and come up with a lot of information out the other end about your operation and some of the things that you could do to correct it, which is very unusual. Most of them just make recommendations for fertilizer or on the agronomic side. I'm not there. We're about going through dollars and cents, and we measure everything with dollars and cents. So let's get started. And what this example is one for small grains. So it's more an example for the northern tier people. And basically what we did is we filled in some mock numbers here. Don't pay too much attention to these as to what they necessarily are. We went through our equipment replacement fund. We had tractors and a sprayer and a combine, a drill that we all wanted to replace, and we're putting some money away to do that. And at the same time, we had a relatively simple crop plan. Canola, spring wheat, yellow peas, and barley. We are a 4,140 acre farm. We don't rent any land. We have 1,200 acres in canola, 1,500 in spring wheat, 640 in yellow peas, and 800 in barley. We've put in some kind of average prices as to what we feel we can get. Put the malt barley in that some makes malt, some goes feed, so there's a bit of a range there. So the yellow peas at around $7.50 Canadian. Spring wheat at 5.5, 11.25. Yields, medium yield, 42 bushels on the canola, 60 on the spring wheat, 55 on peas, and 90 on the barley. All pretty decent. We've got a decision-making tool here that allows you to see where on your high yield coming across as to what prices that you sell it at as to what kind of percent profit you're going to have on that crop, which is just something to give you some comfort. If this thing is mainly red, then you know very well that you're producing right up against the edge. And here's an example of that with spring wheat, is that you got to hit some big yields and you got to hit some big prices in order to make this work. So yellow peas, again, a lot less red. Opportunity to look up here at your high yields or your medium yield and see what kind of prices you have to have. And on the barley, again, the red is about almost, it's not half of the thing, but it's a lot more yield potential in barley than some other things. So, and you got to remember that this is done at your costs. So now the information below is the variable costs of what we've put in. We've got seed as to what we're spending on seed, and just some kind of average numbers. For fertilizer inputs, again, some average kind of numbers. Herbicides, any herbicides in crop. And just putting these down as the fungicides. Put the peas in at 14 because I think you might do some and you might not do some. And crop insurance as to what that might be in your area. So what happens when we get down here to the bottom analysis? Because this is really where it counts. So let's see what we're making at the medium yield. What kind of dollars per acre we're putting in our pocket after all those fixed costs and variable costs are taken out. Because we have the total of the variable at 212, we have our fixed costs at a couple $100. For $400 the total costs. So what kind of yields do we have to make this work? Well, the canola is $57, but the wheat is losing us $52 an acre. Our break-even bushels are 69, which is a big crop. So we got to think about that, whether we're going to spend more money in trying to get more yield or what we're going to do. The yellow peas, as you can see, total field cost, and it's sort of amazing how these three crops all sort of run right together for costs. And yet on the yellow peas, we're making 86 bucks an acre, and on the malt feed barley slash feed barley, we're making 81. Um, Maybe I've got my price too low. Don't seem to be able to get better than that when I phoned. The margin per unit, as you can see, every acre of wheat that you grow, you're dropping 152 bucks. And your break-even price on the wheat, if you're going to get it at a price, is 637, which is well out of reach today. So, and peas are relatively low. The barley's down to 384, and the canola's down to around 988. So we're really a little bit uncertain. We've got a profit of $100,000 in here with no crop insurance or anything, which is 26 bucks an acre. Can we do any better? Because that's pretty skinny. It doesn't take very much to get rid of 26 bucks on an acre. So let's go to our performance tools and see if there's anything in here that would help us out. Let's go to the financial analysis report. Well, the gross margin, we'd like to see up to 65%. Well, if we're not that high, we're saying it's a production problem, but I don't think yields are all that low. A marketing problem. Well, we can't change the markets. We're still a price taker. Our fundamental question, are the right products being raised, or is it a problem with our fixed costs? And fixed costs are everything except for seed, fertilizer, chemical, and crop insurance. All those other costs. So we've put some benchmarks together in here as to where we see it sitting. And these are really difficult costs to try and adjust effectively. And I'm going to take it for granted that you're operating or a good manager, and the fact that your fixed costs will be very difficult to peel much out of them. There's a couple $100 an acre here. And that's not unusual on this size of farm. So it's a question as to whether there's too much labor or equipment for the size of the operation. And it signifies a need to increase acres or sales. So if we're going to increase, let's take a look at remedying high fixed costs. Well, this thing says if we cropped another 1,500 acres roughly, we could pull that down by 50 bucks an acre. So let's go and see what 1,500 more acres look like. So let's go back to the crop plan. And if you want, you could duplicate this plan at $26 an acre, or you can just start working out of this plan. Now, you're going to have to rent this stuff, and because you don't own it. So let's kind of use the same proportions. We got 1,500 acres divided by 4 crops, so it's about 400 acres a crop. Let's put it that way. See how that works out. So let's add 400 acres to each of these, and we're going to cash rent them at, say, the area we're in, the yields we're getting, probably should be able to get that comfortably for 80 bucks. Okay, so let's just go ahead and see what happens here. Now, my goodness, we went from 26 to 42 by adding 400 at 60 bucks of malt barley. Now let's see what another 400 acres does here at $80. Another 400 acres, now we're up to 56. We've doubled our profitability. Do you think we got enough drill capacity to seed 400 more acres? That becomes the critical part of this. So let's add another 400 here at 80 bucks. What does that do? That gets us up to 57. And are we making wheat pay yet? That's the question I have. Have we gotten wheat? Have we got enough acres to make this thing work? to where wheat is now starting to pay. So we've gone up to $65. We've almost tripled our profitability. We're up to almost 400,000 in profits. Our fixed costs are down to 146. Now, granted, we're going to have to add a little fuel, but we can add that in afterwards. Let's see what this looks like down here in the results. Well, we've pulled the wheat down to where we're only losing $17 an acre. Now we need to think about that. Maybe this is where we go and say, well, we're going to change varieties. And we're going to spend a little more money on seed. Maybe we're going to spend $50 on seed. And our yields, we're going to go with one of the higher yielding hybrids that's around. And maybe instead of getting 60 bushels, what if we could pencil 75 in there and feel comfortable? What would that look like? So let's just go 50, 70, and 80. And we have some people doing these yields with Fowler. And we're going to go down and increase the seed treatment, or the seed cost, to $50. And see what this looks like. Well, that gets it up to $17 by getting that yield up. We're at $77 here. We're doing pretty decent. We've got our fixed costs back under control. Now, the question becomes, can we seed 5,700 acres with the equipment we've got today? Well, maybe what we have to do is think about what and say, well, maybe we need to look at this barley thing a little bit. If we lowered the price a little more, it might mean it's going to end up being feed, because these are really all pretty early season crops. So we're going to have to really be humping it to get those kinds of yields. But let's take 2 bits out of this. Say a little more of it goes feed because we're a little slower getting things in. We're still in a much better shape than we were at $25. We had no cushion at all. Now, let's talk a little bit about what this looks like as far as, because we're going to have additional capital to put this in. And in our own success standards, we would like to see the total profit as a percentage of the revenue as 35%. We're not quite there yet on this. We're not quite there yet. Fixed costs as a percentage of total revenue, we're still a little high on those fixed costs for what we've got for revenue. And the variable costs as a percent are high. So maybe we've spent too much money on fertilizer. We need to go back and have a look at that. The thing that I do about this is your variable costs as a percentage of revenue. So the lower the variable costs are, the less cash it takes to put it in the ground. So this is kind of in order of the least to the most expensive crop to seed for what the variable as a percentage of the revenue. Not as a percentage of bushels, just of the revenue. So the contribution margin is the highest on the lowest input one, obviously. And the projected revenue at the medium yield, of course, is the highest on the canola. So we can work our way through that. So if we were to go with the crop that would take the least amount of capital to do this, maybe we should be expanding the peas more. Now that's a little more difficult crop to expand with, but simply because of rotations. But this is how I want you to use this plan. There's a set of reports here that are very good for the bank, good for hired folks, so that they know what it doesn't. You can break this down field by field if you want. You can put as many as you want, but first pick your crops, then pick your fields. And additional income, if you do have any sort of payout programs or anything out there, crop insurance, you pop them in here. And in the fixed costs, one of the main things that I want to make sure you're covering off adequately is your own management fees. And I put 120 grand in here. Lots of people are putting a lot more than that in there, and you probably should be, because if you're a family of 5 maybe in total, and mom and dad are still here, well, then it takes a lot of money to make this thing go around. So this is just a quick tutorial to show you what this software can do and how your bottom line can be changed. And I know it's paper farming. You have to go out and do it. And a big part of it is your management able to go from 4,400 acres to 5,700 acres, up 1,500 acres without any big issues. So with that, safe farming and be brave and expand even your ideas here with some other crops if you want. I didn't do that. You could easily say, well, maybe we should try a few acres of lentils and see if that'll bail us out. But that doesn't fix the wheat problem. So again, safe farming and happy travels. Thank you very much.